You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGackie, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I just want to put a reminder for anybody that didn't listen all the way through last week's episode that we are still looking for Tepe's guitar. So we have another week before the giveaway ends that I put together. There is a Fender Trapper Fuzz up for grabs, and we're trying to utilize the power of Instagram to maybe bring this guitar back into his life. Years ago, from a storage unit they had, that Thrice had, Tepe had a black Les Paul Custom that he just loved, stolen, and he's never been able to recover it, so we're trying to see if maybe somehow somebody ended up with it. So if you go to Instagram, you will see the post I made announcing the episode, and it's a picture of Tepe playing the guitar. Ugh, my brain's failing. Playing the guitar, and it says hashtag find Tepe's Les Paul. So all you need to do is reshare that picture and the serial number of the Les Paul on Instagram. The serial number is 824-855-30. And we have another week before the contest is over, and I'm going to randomly select from anyone who uses that hashtag find Tepe's Les Paul, and posts that picture. I'm going to randomly scroll through and pick somebody to win the Trapper Fuzz next week. So you have a week to do it. If you're just now hearing this episode or just now finding about this, you can still do it. You still have till February 17th to try to help us out here. Okay, my guest today is named Kyle Sipress. He plays in a band called The Devil Wears Prada, who you may have heard of if you are a fan of any of the other bands that have been featured on this podcast. There's a good chance you have heard of them. They have a new record out, and they're getting ready to do some touring, and he talks about all that stuff. He has a really interesting story and an approach that I'm coming to find more and more common in the touring world. So he's a really cool dude, a genuine gear nerd, and yeah, I'll shut up now and let you get into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar tone and the people behind it. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Kyle Sipress from The Devil Wears Prada. What's going on, dude?
Not too much, man. How you doing?
Pretty good. Just hanging in there today, but I've been looking forward to this since NAMM, so I'm glad we're getting around to doing this. This one came around rather quickly. Sometimes it takes a couple years of trying to schedule people, so this is cool.
Yeah. Well, who was it? Ryan? That was the one who introduced us. Ryan Fuzzrocious.
Yeah, he's the best.
He is the man.
I love that guy so much. He's probably overdue for another appearance on the cast. It's been it's probably been like a year or so since he's been on. That's ridiculous. He needs to come back on.
He's a very good guy. Love him
for sure. So maybe we'll start with you and telling your backstory. I mean, I know the band's been around for a long time at this point, which is kind of crazy to think about. And maybe we can just start with your musical backstory. When did you start playing guitar? And then you can tell the story of you with the band, and we'll get into all the other nonsense we get into on this thing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's far too many details to get into, but I'll just say I've been playing guitar for, I don't know, since middle school or whatever, like 7th grade, and been in numerous local and regional bands here and there. But I guess I'll get into how I got involved with Prada. So I was actually in between bands in 2013, and a coworker of mine had a boyfriend that was going to meet at a bar one night, a place called Longman and Eagle in Chicago, if anyone's familiar with that. It's a great spot. Went out there and her boyfriend's name was Mike, who I was unaware of. That was the singer of Prada. And we got to hanging out for quite a while. And then one day he asked me if I wanted a guitar tech, the gig being Riot Fest. So I started guitar teching for like a 20,000 person attendance show. And from that day on, I just started guitar teching for Chris specifically, who ended up leaving in 2014. And then they asked me to take his position. And ever since then, I've been gigging with him.
Was that kind of a trip to be thrown right into the fire like that? Like, I don't know. I don't think most people start their first guitar tech gig with something that big.
It was, but at the same time, just I think given that I was working at a restaurant for about a year, I was kind of just ready to take anything that put me back into music. So I was pretty excited to take that job, and then they were happy with the job that I was doing. So it was exciting.
Did you had some prior experience though, clearly, because that's not something you just jump into and know immediately how to handle it. What were you doing before that?
Yeah, I mean, I've never done anything like professionally guitar tech or whatever, but I've always been kind of just DIY, furthering my knowledge of setting up guitars and fixing pedals and things like that. Nothing super extreme, but setting up guitars, the most basic stuff, just keeping the gear all maintained and whatnot. So it was pretty seamless.
Gotcha. Well, maybe we can go back a little bit further. What did you when you first picked up the guitar, like what was it? Like, this is the kind of nerd stuff that people like to get into on that show. So what was
my first guitar that I picked up, my dad got me some kind of Cort acoustic thing. And just kind of played around on some, like, I don't even remember, like some Incubus and stuff. And then from there, I was obviously eager to get an electric guitar, and my dad got me like a pawn shop. I think it was an Ibanez RG220. It was like the kind of Ibanez you get as like a amp guitar cable, guitar pack kind of deal.
Right.
So not the best guitar, but hearing distortion coming out of an amp, I was like, all right, this is sick. Let's keep going.
This is the thing. This is the thing I've
This is
been
way
looking
cooler
for.
than acoustic guitar. So let's keep going.
That is exactly how I felt. It was like, this is what I've been missing. This is what Metallica does.
Yep.
I can now do exactly what Metallica does. Clearly. It's so nuts. But so from there, you obviously you played in some local bands and all that stuff you were talking about. What kind of bands were they? What kind of music pulled you in?
I mean, the early stuff was just like the friends I had that were interested in playing music, just anything from Green Day to whatever, So it was just kind of like cover songs at first or whatever, and then moving into like some kind of pop punk, pop rock. And then from there, it was just like ever evolving into whatever. And yeah, I mean, I've been in just so many bands, a lot of them just generally rock, like not rock and roll, but whatever.
Hard rock. Like,
yeah, I've never been in like, I had never been in any like heavier metal bands or anything like that. So it's kind of funny that I'm in the Devil Wears Prada currently, being that I never grew up playing that type of music, but it was a fun challenge to try to conquer, and it's been fun ever since.
That was kind of what I was curious about. It seems like everyone has a different story. Sometimes people hang out in the heavier regions their entire life, but more often than not, I'm starting to discover that people start with like Green Day and then eventually end up in a metalcore situation.
Yeah. I mean, the local shows I used to go to back in the day in the Northwest Indiana, Southwest Michigan scene was very hardcore, metalcore, that whole scene back in the day. So our band would always get teamed up with way heavier bands than what we were, and we kind of just had friendships within those realms. So it's always been familiar to me. I just never played in those types of bands, so it was fun.
Gotcha. Did your gear have to drastically change going from the kind of the lighter side to the heavier side?
A bit, yeah. I've for the past, I don't know, 15 years, I've had this 74 Marshall JMP that I love. And obviously I needed to step up. So at first, when Chris left, I just kind of took his rig, which was like the 6505s. Or he had the 6534 or whatever. It was the EL34 version of it.
Okay.
So I played those for a while. I liked them. They sound great. But in terms of like the higher gain stuff, I was always a Soldano fan. So I ended up grabbing a Soldano Avenger Hot Rod 100. And then I just went in between my JMP for clean and the Soldano for dirty. And that's more or less still what I'm using, except I've moved into the Synergy world.
Oh, I see. I hear a lot of guys starting to go that way. What's your Synergy setup look like?
So my Synergy it's just so simple. It's I have a 4-space rack with a Furman, a wireless unit, and then I have the Syn 2, which is like the dual module, and I have the SLO and a Morgan AC, which covers my dirty and clean. And I'm not even using cabs anymore on stage, which is insane. Because if you saw my rig right before this, I had 3 412s and 3 heads going pretty much simultaneously with a bunch of radial gear and rack shit. And it just got overly complicated. And every time we're on tour with these bands who have these little Kempers and Axe FX things, like, you want to slim down, but you don't want to compromise your tone. And I was like kind of starting to look into the Kemper realm, and every time I've played one, I don't love it. I'm impressed by the technology. It's really cool what you can do with them, but it was like, I just don't want to like just use it just because it saves space in the trailer or is easier to set up and carry around. And then Andy from Every Time I Die hit me up about his Synergy rig. And I figured if he's using it, he's pretty anal about amps and whatnot as well. So he hooked me up with Jeff over at Synergy, and Jeff let me try some stuff out. And it was kind of the like, this is going to be too good to be true if it works. And it was, or it wasn't. It was perfect. Like I A-B'd my Soldano against the Synergy Soldano. And it was like, if there's a difference, they both sound good. I don't know. Like you still get the tube compression, you still get everything. And at that time, Jeff also from Synergy sent me over their tube power amp. So I was just kind of doing that, and we had a day after recording the record, the most recent record, The Act, where we played I guess it was 2 days after we finished. We played a show in New Jersey at a place called the Starland Ballroom, which is a beautiful venue, great PA. And we had a rehearsal day there. So I did kind of the 3-way test of using the Synergy with the power amp, using it with the power amp, like going through my cabs and the cab sim on the back, and then just the cab sim. And it just won. It sounded better. Our front of house dude liked it a lot more because there's less bleed to deal with and everything. But it just sounds good. The consistency in my in-ears is awesome. And it's the first thing, like I said, where I'm not compromising my tone, and I get to have a way smaller package. And the fact that you get to take that little thing overseas and it sounds the exact same is awesome.
Do you notice any difference in not physically feeling the air move? Because that's always been my gripe with going straight. Of course, I've never actually played the Synergy rig, so take this with a grain of salt. But
yeah.
But like every time I go with anything that's just straight in headphones, I feel like I'm losing. I feel like I don't play like myself because I feel stiffer and I'm missing that cab hitting me in the back and all that. But do you aren't getting that with this? I'm assuming.
Well, the thing is, with my last setup, especially, I had my Soldano Avenger, and then I also had this custom amp company out of Chicago called Dean Costello Amps. It's called the HMW, the Heavy Metal Warfare, which is like probably one of the sickest high gain amps that I've ever played, but it's 144 watts. So I had both of those going at the same time, two 4x12s, and even at like 2.5 on each, I had to have my cabs turned around backwards. So like for the longest time, I didn't really have that. There's like a little stage rumble or whatever still, but I didn't have that. So it wasn't that crazy. And then with the Synergy stuff, we'll put in stuff like side fill or through the monitors on the floor just to get some rumble. And honestly, it feels better because my tone is just more consistent in my ears, and I still have that like ability to feedback and all that stuff, just like a normal cab.
This is really a have your cake and eat it too type situation. It's starting to sound like. What about your pedal board? What's it looking like?
So my pedal board currently, I have the Pedal Train Classic or the Pro or whatever it is. I have a Tapestry Audio Bloomery volume pedal, and then I'm using a Mastermind PBC 10. It's like the looper MIDI guy. And then I've got the Fortin grind going into the front of my Soldano. I have an ISP decimator, and then I'm using the Spectral Tempest, which is that reverb delay engine deal.
Yeah. The GFI, right?
Yeah, it's very sick. And then I've got a Pog and a Red Panda Raster.
Oh, the Raster's great. That's such a fun pedal.
But I mean, it switches up every tour. I don't like to bring out things that I'm not using on the set list that we're using. So it does drastically change.
Do you have a lot more at home?
Oh yeah, I've got about, I think I'm sitting on like 68 pedals or something off my board right now.
Yeah.
Very into the effects world.
When did you start getting into that?
Honestly, probably, I feel like I've always been into it, but being able to afford things has only been probably the last 5 years where I can find a pedal I like and just grab it. So yeah, my collection has accumulated pretty quick in the last several years.
I can relate to that. I didn't start really getting crazy until about that same time frame, and then getting into the industry, it was like, oh boy, this is dangerous.
This is a very dangerous game.
To the point where, like, whenever I bring in the mail, my 4-year-old is like, "Did you get a new pedal today?" I'm like, "No, not. It doesn't happen every day." My wife's like, "Not every day, but seems like more days than not." I'm like, "Oh boy, this might not be a good thing to teach my children."
It's a problem. Just got to address it.
Just be like, don't do as I say, not as I do. Maybe one of those situations.
This overdrive sounds way better than this overdrive, so you're gonna really want it.
My little boy, my like 9-month-old, he seems to have like more of a reaction than my older kid did. Like, he'll just come out and sit on the floor. Now, keep in mind, this kid is like wild. He's into everything. He'll come out here and he will sit in one spot on the floor and watch me play guitar for like a half hour. And
that's great.
And he just sits there like in amazement. My other kid wouldn't really do that. He seems to be more interested in drums. But Rocky, the youngest, he just was like, all right, let's watch Dad play and noodle around and make bleep bloop sounds,
that's sick.
Hey, if I can get him to sit still for a little bit, that is a win at this point. It's a big win.
Have you ever put the guitar in his hands? Is he interested in trying it out?
Oh yeah, definitely. Grandpa and Grandma got him one of those 3/4 Squire Strats for Christmas.
Nice.
And he just immediately, he loves touching guitars. Like it's actually kind of like, I don't know how much I'm just projecting this on him and want him to be into it, or how much he like just kind of naturally has this interest, but his eyes light up when he sees one and he like starts crawling towards it. But
that's sick.
He's so young at this point, it's kind of hard to tell, but it seems like he might already have the bug, which is that's
cool. Rad. I wish I would have had that I guess opportunity when I was younger to even check one out. It had been, it was not till I was in my teenage years that I my early teenage years that I got to like decide whether or not I liked it.
Yeah, I was always kind of interested in it, but I didn't have, my dad doesn't really play electric that much. He's primarily an acoustic player, and so I've always been interested in the harder side of things, and even from a young age. And he's not a gearhead at all, so I would ask him like, how do you get your guitars to sound like Linkin Park? And he doesn't he doesn't know. It's not his, he's busy playing Waylon Jennings songs, that's what he does.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, I'm not complaining. I love that music too. It's just a different, it's kind of a different thing.
Different world for sure.
Absolutely. So I asked this about from a lot of guys that have had some experience touring, and I get various answers. But without incriminating anybody, what's the craziest thing you've seen on tour?
Oh man, the craziest thing
or most interesting thing. It doesn't always have to be crazy. Sometimes I phrase it that way.
Honestly, there's so many varying things. I don't even know. I think an interesting thing that just pops into my mind hearing that question. We were on Mayhem tour, or that Mayhem Fest tour. It was actually the last year. I think it was 2015. When we were in Vegas, we got invited to go to Vinnie Paul's house for his barbecue. Whoa. Which was pretty funny because by the time we got there, it was pretty late, and there was like our merch guy was like in the pool when I got there, which like his pool was like, it was like this, like what I imagine like the Playboy Mansion pool to look like, where it has like a little cave and like a jacuzzi on top and all this shit, like a water slide. Like walk into the house and there's like 6 small tube TVs all lined up, like making one picture, and all these like cardboard cutouts of Vinnie Paul everywhere and stuff. And I think there was like several of like the King Diamond crew was there, and like not a lot of people. And I think Vinnie Paul like just left as we got there. So we're just kind of like in his house, like drinking and eating all this food that he made. And
well, that's kind of weird.
It was a pretty weird experience, honestly, but it was pretty cool. He was a super nice guy on the whole tour. Like he would have his little grill outs and things all the time, which was pretty surreal because he's just like, he was the nicest dude, and he liked cooking for people and providing a good time. But definitely being in his house, just kind of like getting wasted and him not being there with a bunch of random people was pretty funny.
It seems like I'm getting more exposed to, I definitely come at this through the gear world and starting to get exposed to more of the band side and the actual performance side of things. I'm seeing like it's, because I'm just a fan of all this stuff. Sure. I just talk to people on the internet, and I'm the guy, out in the crowd, out in the mosh pit, like, and seeing the other side. I got really fortunate recently, got to interview Tepe from Thrice, and
very nice.
The listeners will know that I'm a huge fanboy, like,
yeah,
huge.
Thrice
fan.
Is very sick.
Oh man, love those guys so much. But like, and then we're just hanging out backstage and everything, and my friend Jess and I, we're both massive fans, and we're just kind of like looking at each other like, what are we doing here? Like,
yeah,
how did we get here? Like, and everyone's chill. There was nobody like having an ego trip or any rock star nonsense. It wasn't like anyone was making it weird, but us in our head, because in our head we're still 15 and just discovering this stuff. So seeing behind the curtain is kind of wild.
Yeah, I've felt that just being on tour before, like even on just Mayhem, like I was just talking about, like coming out of the shower and like Tom Araya is right there and he's just laughing at me because I'm just in a towel or something, and I'm like,
like what am I doing right now?
How on earth did that happen?
Yeah,
it's very sick that was at the VSU show.
Yes, yeah, it was the second show of that tour.
Very jealous. I cannot see that show I cannot see that tour with my schedule right now, and that bums me out. That's probably my favorite Thrice record.
That one changed everything for me. Like it really did. It made me go from like this straight up hardcore kid to like, oh wait, things can have more nuance.
yeah,
and be more, more subtle with what you're saying. And instead of like, I was just eternally looking for the next heaviest thing up until that record came out.
It's pretty heavy still. It's pretty sick.
It is heavy. It's not, I'm not trying to downplay it at all.
No, I know.
But yeah, it's just, but then you go from, you know, songs like Hold Fast Hope and then Music Box.
Right.
You know, it's just a different dynamic that I wasn't used to.
They are a ever evolving band, and I appreciate that about them for sure.
Speaking of evolving, this latest record that you guys did, wow, like that seemed to take things to the like in the opposite way, take things to the next level. What was that like going through that process?
Well, so we had been throwing around ideas for what the next record was going to be, and it was like we talked about doing like a Zombie 2 kind of thing, and then we kind of just started writing again, and our keyboardist and I were kind of sitting on like, I think we had like 30 something songs, and they all just kind of fit within the Transit Blues world, which was the record right before that, and they just kind of seemed like an extension of that record, which, you know, we're really proud of that record, but at the same time, there was a lot of things that happened during that record that didn't allow the songs to be done as well as they could have been, or written as well as they could have been. But when we got into it as well, we're kind of just trying to figure out, what do we do? And a lot of us, well, none of us really listened to like a ton of metalcore or anything that's in the genre that we are put in. So we're trying to think of like, we basically we scrapped all of those previous demos that we had and kind of got down to the drawing board, and we're like, all right, well, what are we going to do here? First thing we need to do is make sure that we write songs that fit both Mike and Jeremy's vocals, rather than just write a bunch of riffs and try to cram some vocals on top of it. The main focus was let's put the vocals in the forefront, because that's what makes a great song great, as well as let's write music that we would listen to and truly enjoy. So with that came a lot of searching for what this next record was going to be, and we didn't know what it was going to be. Like, some of the songs, I think we sat on like almost 80 before we came down to the final ones, and there's a vast array of types of songs and tunings, and heavy and not heavy, and just some that didn't even have guitar, some that had, you know, whatever. And it came down to what we had. But yeah, we're all super, super happy with how it turned out, because it feels like something that we all enjoy. We want to show people, we want to talk to our friends about it this time, rather than just like, yeah, we threw out another record. Not that that's how we do it, but yeah. So it is a huge departure, but it's also, you know, we're in our 30s now, and the band has been around long before I was in it, and I think it's coming up on 15 years now, which is pretty crazy.
That is nuts.
You know, they were young kids in high school writing just like some crazy metalcore songs that like kind of changed things up in a way for a lot of people. And I think there's just a little bit more intention in that now. I think everybody would agree with that as well. It's just, back then it was, you know, you're young, let's have fun, let's be crazy, and it fits, you know, those old songs fit the mindset of the younger people that were in the band. And now it's just, we're older, we've gone through so many different experiences, and we're adults, and that's kind of what came out.
It's really a great record. I think it's probably one of my favorites out of all the ones that the band has done. And
thank you.
It might be my favorite, actually. I don't know. It's hard to say. There's some
that.
nostalgia there. You know, when things are 15 years old, you definitely have some
absolutely
nostalgia factors. But this record is truly, it's great. And I think the reception has been really positive as well. Has that been?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great. It sold better than the last two records, which is pretty crazy given the trajectory of buying music at this point.
Right.
But even then, like, I think overall we're still so much more proud of this record. We just put so much into it. We recorded most of it live. And it's just like the process that we went through and the people that we worked with. Like we've usually worked with Dan Corniff in the past, and he's a phenomenal producer and engineer. I actually hung out with him several nights at NAMM. But this time again, with just like doing things differently, it was like, let's do everything differently. Let's start from scratch. So we actually had our keyboardist, John, produce the record, and he did a bunch of writing on it as well. Even lyrically. And, it was a very great process, in terms of just changing things up. And John is unknown to most people. He does a lot of writing and producing for all kinds of bands, that you've definitely heard of before. So it was not a new experience for him. And to have our whole group kind of just be able to make all the decisions in-house was, I think, worked out for the best.
You mentioned that none of you are really listening to the metalcore genre. Is that kind of a weird thing? Because I can't hardly imagine like not listening to the genre you play in. And I'm not saying that as a critique, but like I feel like it would be difficult for me to create in that space if that's not the scene I was sort of putting myself in.
Right. Well, and that's kind of the thing as well with, writing these new songs. It was, we were writing with a like pre-filter of, we have to fit these into the metalcore genre. Whereas this time we're like, all right, let's just take that filter off and just write the way we would. And obviously there's still some, metalcore, whatever pieces to the new
elements.
record. Yeah. But it seems like, and we all kind of have the same mindset, that like the metalcore genre seems to have just kind of plateaued. And like I scour Apple Music every Friday for new releases and things, and it just seems like I haven't heard anything new. A lot of things are just getting recycled, and which is fine. But I'd like to hear some new stuff, and it seems like the metalcore genre has just kind of become stale. So it is a little weird to exist in that realm, but at the same time, like it does seem like a lot of bands that were in that realm already are making that same assessment and kind of growing and pushing themselves. So it is moving forward, but I think it's just kind of it's the natural progression of bands who have been around for as long as Prada has been, that you got to start to change things up and keep it interesting for yourself as well as your listeners.
So what kind of stuff are you listening to?
Oh, so many different
kinds of things. I know that's a very, very difficult question for most
yeah.
people.
I mean, it varies so much. Currently I've been listening to, I'm trying to think,
well, I've stole this move from another podcast in the past. This might make it easier for you if you have your phone handy.
Yeah.
Do you have it handy?
Let's see.
So just pull up Apple Music, and what's the last thing you listen to? I stole that from the Make More Music podcast, by the way. I was on it, and he had me do that. Yeah, instead of asking me what I just asked you, he was like, pull your phone out and tell me what the last thing you listened to was. And I was like, that is so much easier than me trying to just think about what it was.
So the last two, Sabrina Claudio and Friggs. Friggs is a Canadian like post-punk band that's really sick. I've also listened to this artist called Arthur Moon. A lot of the artists I listen to are like female vocalists. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so those are the most recent ones. Not very guitar heavy, but I've also been trying to focus more on songwriting rather than riffing, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's been helpful.
Especially, yeah, apparently it's been very helpful. The results speak for themselves, I suppose. But let's see. Let's go to I have a Facebook group with this podcast, and if I ever can remember, I will ask them for questions for guests. So let's slide in there and see if anybody has anything that isn't silly, because oftentimes my listeners like silly questions because, well, that makes sense because that's kind of the person I am. So let's see. Here we go. We got John Schick Jr. This is I've never thought about this question. What book does he think listeners should read?
Ooh, see, that's going to be a hard one for me because I am not an avid reader. So I'm gonna just have to say, whichever book speaks to you most, pick it up.
Okay, that works. That works. That is a good one. All right, this is a silly question, but I like it too much to not use it. So we're gonna go with it.
Let's do it.
David Leong wants to know which starting Pokemon in the original game.
Ooh. I don't know. See, that's another question. I was like the trader and seller of Pokemon cards, but I didn't really play that much.
Ooh, you were hustling.
So, yeah, I was in like middle school getting all the holograms and selling them off to the other kids. Trying to make that side cash.
I hear you. So Charmander, because that's the only right answer. So we're just going to move on from that. Yeah, let's go Charmander. Here's a gear-related one. This is a good gear-related one. So Zach Stanberry asks if you had to build a hardcore rig, and I'm assuming he kind of means like heavier metal is what I'm assuming he means by that. For less than 1,500, what would it be?
Under 1,500?
Yeah, less than 1,500. Let's say 1,500 tops.
Well, let's see. Hardcore rig. Hardcore as in, I don't know. I guess
I think he probably means just like heavier music rig.
Man. See, that's so hard to answer now because of the amps that I've played and own, which are more than 1,500.
At least 1,500 by themselves. Yes.
Let's just say you find a really good deal. Again, I'm going to go back to the Dean Costello HMW, which is slightly more than 1,500, but do that and just find some shitty like PV 4x12 or something. You'll be good.
Okay. That'll work.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what else do we have in here. We actually have a lot of questions, but some of them don't make any sense to me, so I don't know what to say. Well, this is a little more in depth than we kind of went into it when we were talking about the new record, but maybe you have more highlights you can give. Tyler Aldridge, he wants to know, how do they maintain the ability to stay relevant in an ever-changing genre? How much has the songwriting shifted intentionally as each new EP and album has dropped? So I guess I would expand on that to say, based on what you said previously, was there much of a shift in the methods for the earlier records, or did that major shift come on the act?
In terms of writing, I think a lot has changed. Being that, so the guy I replaced, Chris Ruby, he was kind of the main songwriter, and he would put songs together, and they used to literally just like write 12, 13 songs, and that was the record. And we've tried, even like, I think Space EP was kind of like that. After he had left, we each kind of just wrote a couple songs, and that was the Space EP. And then Transit Blues was like, I think we had like 3 songs left over that we didn't use or something like that. But so with Chris not writing and with John taking over so much of the writing and producing, and me writing a lot as well, and just really everybody kind of putting more of their say into it. And as far as the relevancy thing, I mean, that's just kind of however that gets accepted in the public. But yeah, we just try to do things differently and do them naturally and make sure that they feel good to all of us before we can put it out and see if everybody else thinks it's nice.
Well, we talked about pedals and we talked about amps, but because I'm a dingus, we didn't talk about guitars before we started sliding into more general questions. So maybe we should talk about your guitars a little bit, since this is supposedly what this podcast is about.
Well,
or so I'm told.
Yeah. Well, my favorite guitars and the guitars that I use everywhere are Dunnable. So I have 3 right now. I've got a Dunnable Yarnhawk, a Dunnable Yeti, and a Dunnable Cyclops. And then I have an R2 being built right now because I can't get enough of them. And Sasha is just the man.
He's so cool.
I have put an Evertune in my most recent one, which I love. And I use bare knuckle Blackhawks. I have them covered, nickel covered, because I have a problem with having super caustic sweat, and I will short out guitars, like 3 of them per set. So I had to start covering my pickups. And
really,
it's been very helpful. Yeah.
So do you eat strings alive too?
Yeah, I change strings almost every show. Like I'll test them the day of, but generally pretty much every day I change strings just because my sweat is insane. And we're using Ernie ball strings right now. We got like 13 to 62s and 14 to 68s. So I got some pretty big guys.
Let's talk about those. Yeah, those are pretty beefy. But I like heavier strings myself, even in standard tuning. It's just kind of,
it's nice.
I started breaking 9s when I was a kid because I hit my guitars and broke the strings like a moron. And I thought, how do I avoid this? And so I went to 11s and then stopped having that problem. But then I didn't realize I didn't even realize at the time that was a heavier string. Right. I was just like, oh,
these work better.
Okay. These work better. And yeah, it's harder to play, and I just got used to it. It was weird. But let's talk about the Evertunes, because I have zero experience with the Evertunes. I don't even really know how they work. I just know that they seem to be slightly controversial in
they're scary world. For sure.
What's going on with those things?
So it's basically just it's a spring system that goes underneath your pickups. It's quite a chunk of wood has to get cut out of the base of your guitar, which is why it's super scary.
Okay.
The guitars I use are pure mahogany and they're super heavy. So honestly, it doesn't really do much out of my guitars. I can't notice a difference, honestly. And if there is, again, you're not going to notice the difference coming through front of house. However, so the thing I think that everyone gets scared about is the system is built so that the main intention is that you set it up, and no matter how hard or far you bend your strings, the note does not change. So you tune it, you set it up, put the intonation correctly, or get the intonation set up, and then it stays there forever. It's great. Really great for recording like rhythm guitars and stuff. However, there are ways you can set it up so that it bends, but it stays in tune as well. And I'm a very bendy guitar player, so all of my strings bend still. However, it lowers the range of your guitar going out of tune. So like the way I have it set up, it will throughout the set just barely go out of tune, and I'll tune it up a little bit. But even then, it's like I could not touch it the entire set, and it would be great. It's just like I've also found that like having it that in tune is great because just like the harmonics are richer through chords and everything sounds better. And so now I got Jeremy, our other guitar player and singer, using one as well, and like I think we sound great. It's scary to commit to putting it in your guitar for sure, but I couldn't recommend it more, honestly, especially for our type of music.
I'm gonna have to try it one of these days. I don't have an opinion on it currently. That's where I stand. Is still like I just don't know. I've never played one to experience it, but I didn't know that about the bendy stuff.
Yeah,
because I do a lot of cranking and bending on my guitars as well. So that might be a hard thing for me to get used to. I'm not sure. But then again, I'm generally fretting things wrong, and so it's out of tune anyway.
And it's nice for that as well. But I also have so we generally play in like drop B, but we have a couple songs that we're playing that are in drop G sharp, which is insane. So I have this set up in drop G sharp with my Evertune, and it's perfect. Like I've to have a perfectly intonated, perfectly in tune guitar G sharp is really sick.
Let's see. I'm going to dive back into the Facebook group real quick because I do this all the time. I ask it like way too late. I ask it like 10 minutes before the recording, and then people are like, why did you not ask this yesterday? Because I'm dumb. That's why. But Spencer Hyam wants to know, he says, I'd love to know what cheap hidden gem pedals he loves, like sub $50 sort of stuff. Do you have any of those in your stash?
Hidden gem pedals. Let me look. Oh, honestly, not any that are like $50. I've built a couple that were like $50 that are pretty sick. Like I built the what is it? The Kurt Blue Brutalist Jr.
The Brutalist?
Yeah. That pedal's super sick, and if you have even just a slight level of soldering, you can put that together very cheaply, and it sounds really good. I also built a what is that? It's just some kind of fuzz pedal. You just find some fuzz circuits. Honestly, like one of the best ways to just like get into pedals is just learn how to build them, because you can get cheap kits and put them together yourself. They might not look nice, but you'll get an idea. So
what are some of your preferred kit providers?
Oh, I don't even remember. It's like Tone Pad or something like that. I can't remember. I've only put several together.
Tone Pad. Oh yeah, that sounds right.
It's something like that. But yeah, the Brutalist Jr. was the last one I've made, and I like to tinker around with just little like circuit bent Casios and things like that to get strange sounds.
Let's see. Sliding back over to the Facebook group, Andrew Span asked a question that we've covered a lot of, but one of the sections he asked is about the artwork for the new record. It says it's some of the coolest that came out last year, and he'd be curious to hear a little bit about how you guys chose it.
Sure. So the band has worked with Dan Seagrave, who did the artwork before with like Dead Throne. And so we wanted to have artwork that kind of contrasted the sound of it, as well as just be super sick and epic and revolve around the idea of hell. So we talked to Dan Seagrave, and he was down to do that. And then we kind of just collaboratively decided on like not making it just this super metal painting as the entire thing. Like, let's break it up with a border and some bold artwork and whatnot. And I don't know, Mike had more of a hand in the art direction with that. So we're all very stoked on how that came out.
It's intimidating looking. Like, that was like the first thing that stuck out, and I was like, man, those monster things.
Yeah,
I don't want to be involved in whatever's going on there. I don't want anything to do with it. Other than, sonically, I love it.
Right.
But the visuals, when it first dropped, I was like, woo, those kind of paintings and those scenes there that are really striking. They just remind me of some of these old horror novels that I would read as a kid, that I don't even remember what the title was or who the author was, but like I would pick it out of the elementary school library, and I remember bringing them home thinking, I think these are more than kids are supposed to be exposed to. When I was like 11, I was like, but I can't help but read about, Beowulf tearing the arm of this monster off, and then you flip the page and there's like a full-blown illustration of that happening.
Right.
And I'm like, I just don't know if this is intended for children, but I'm so fascinated by all this. This is crazy. But yeah. So what is it like when you go to other countries and you're playing these songs, and maybe for people who don't even speak the same language, is that a weird experience, or are you kind of used to it by now?
It's definitely surreal. Like we were just in December, we went over and did like Russia, UK, and Europe. And I've never been to Russia, and the band hasn't been there in 6 years. So going there and it was like a crazy good reception. Everybody, the Russian crowd very much liked our new songs, and it was great to hear them so interested and excited to be a part of the show and whatnot. And hearing them sing back the newer songs louder than the older songs was pretty crazy to me.
Wow.
But yeah, there's no way to like sum it all up because it's just such a wild experience. I think we were all kind of blown away and surprised by that being such a crazy thing, especially like one of our, I guess, softer songs, as you would say, Chemical, like the most people crowd surfing to that song and just like going crazy was pretty crazy to see, especially when we're playing like, you know, some zombie songs and things where people are still moshing and stuff. But like, it's nice to see people very interested in the new music that is quite different.
I was gonna say Russia seems like such a crazy place for the United States citizens, especially people like me who haven't really been to that many places. Is it as insane over there as we are made to believe that it is by the media and whatever else?
I can't speak for the entire country. We were in probably their two biggest cities, probably the most wealthy cities being St. Pete and Moscow. But I mean, it was beautiful. It was very clean. It was huge. A bunch of us are like veggie vegans, and we were able to find like really good vegan restaurants and get our Starbucks and everything. Like it was, I don't know. Everyone's really nice, and they like are excited to talk to Americans. And I don't think it's quite as crazy as a lot of us make it out to seem. It's a pretty nice place to be, honestly.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about, because the perception that most of us have is very distorted. It's like Russia, you know, like, oh man, this big, tough, scary, cold place, which I'm sure parts of it are that way. But
yeah, I mean,
what you're describing sounds more like Portland.
We took the train from Moscow to St. Pete, and you know, some of the rural towns and villages that you pass by is pretty crazy to see, which is why I'm going to say I can't speak about the entire country, but where we were, yeah, it was very nice.
Is that the most different place you've been, or where's the most different place you've been?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. We've been to like Slovakia and Bratislava and just like those kinds of places. We were in Greece in 2017, which was pretty crazy. We did like Athens and Thessaloniki, and like when you go to a place where like they have an entirely different alphabet and language that like you can't even assume to translate what they're saying. Like if you go to like Mexico or Germany or something like that, where you can like kind of get the gist of what is being said. But when you get to like Greece and stuff like that, where you're just like, yeah, or like Poland was pretty crazy. Just, their language is so different, but at the same time, anytime nowadays you go anywhere, like everyone can speak English at least well enough to have a conversation and get you somewhere. And we're like the stupid Americans who just come in and we're like, yeah, I can't speak your language at all. Can you help me get to the bathroom? The entire world
I just
is
don't
like
know where I am.
just way ahead of us on language.
Yeah, I think it's has something to do with the fact that our country is so big and everyone pretty much speaks the same language. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of us never leave the country. And so it's like, why would I, spend time to learn something else? Whereas they have a lot of us coming there and a lot of them leaving and going to other places where it seems more of a necessity for smaller countries or different countries. I'm not saying it's better or worse. We definitely should probably step our game up in that department. But
definitely makes you feel stupid.
Kind of. Oh yeah, yeah. When somebody just switches languages on the fly, you're like, wow, I'm not very intelligent.
Right.
I
did not do good in Spanish in high school either.
No, I didn't. I avoided it. I was like, why do I need to do that? I'm American. I don't need to learn anything. That was dumb of me. I should have definitely took some Spanish. So stupid.
That's okay.
We're getting into the last little bits here of the podcast, and we've got some classic questions that we would like to go over. But before I do that, I like to give the guests an opportunity to kind of put up a billboard and say whatever they want to say, whether you want to send people to a particular website, tell them where you can, where they can find you, or just say something that you want to get off your chest, whatever you want to say.
Well, I mean, we maybe just a little, we're about to head out on a tour in March. So I'll just kind of plug that. We're going to go out on the We Came as Romans 10-year anniversary tour that they're doing with our pals Gideon and Dayseeker, which will be a good time. Other than that, we're pretty much, looks like we're going to be busy touring for the next 2 years. We've been going over scheduling, so maybe just keep an eye out on our Instagram or Twitter and all that stuff, and you'll see dates and stuff, because we're definitely coming to where you live.
Okay. Well, if you have some time when you come to Portland, I'd love to say hi.
Yeah,
that'd be a good time.
There. I think this tour goes up there. We will be there shortly.
Sweet.
So come on
right
out.
on, dude. Cool. Come on out, folks. Go check them out. It'll be a good time for you and the whole family. Well, maybe not the whole family. You got to probably leave the 9-month-old at home. Yeah. Probably not a good idea. But, for the grown-ups in the house, you can go check out that tour. Okay, here we go. We're going with some classic questions now. This one, I've had a lot of people respond just way quicker than I would have ever thought, because I would really have to think about this one a little more in depth, but it seems to be on the tip of most people's tongue. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
Favorite Boss pedal? Honestly, like the DD3 through the DD6 is pretty great. It's just a great, maybe underrated delay pedal. It's like the one that I started with. I think I had the DD3 first, then I got a DD6 where it had the like loop, the loop ability, and that kind of changed. That changed my entire world. Being able to like write sections of songs or whatever and show people, as long as I didn't like hit the button. But yeah, that or like just the TU2. Honestly, it's still like TU2 and TU3 like being some of the best tuners still.
Yeah, they're like the tuner. Are they the first tuner pedal? I think they might be.
Oh, I'm sure remember. There is. I don't know if like Peterson was out before them or something, but probably one of the first widely used tuner, I would imagine.
Yeah, they've definitely become a staple. And the DD series is great. Like, yes, I love the DD delays. They're fantastic.
What's your favorite Boss pedal?
My favorite Boss pedal, honestly, it goes back and forth. Right now, it's probably the good old DS1.
Yeah, it's a great pedal.
I've found, it's you got to set it a little bit differently than you would think,
right?
Than what we've been conditioned to think. But I have found the DS1 with a baritone guitar. It sounds insane.
It's a great pedal. I
was like, what? This is not the pedal that I thought it was. I bought one at Guitar Center probably a year or two ago, honestly, just because it was on sale and it was one of the black ones.
Mm-hmm.
Guitar Center had a special run that was just black. It's not the anniversary edition. It was one that was done specifically for Guitar Center. And
oh, nice.
In typical GC fashion, they just kind of priced things all over the place, and this was like $30. And so I was like, I want a black DS1 for $30.
Yeah,
and
I need a guitar pedal today.
Yeah, exactly. And I brought it home kind of not really thinking that much of it, and plugged in. I was like, this DS1 sounds fantastic. What on earth is going on right now? I made a little video and put it on Instagram. I'll have to put a link in here or something. Yeah. Link in the show notes if I remember to do it. It's that, or it's the BF. Was it BF2? The flanger, the old.
Oh yeah, the purple guy.
Fan. Yep.
Yeah,
I like the BF2 quite a bit. So, but
I mean,
DS1
also,
for now.
The more I think about it, they just have great, like the RV5 even, like that's a great reverb. They have a lot of great pedals that are underrated in our modern times.
Boss is I think they're finally getting the recognition from the gear snobs, and I put myself in that category that they deserve in the last 2 or 3 years. There was a time where Boss pedals weren't cool, quote unquote.
I remember that. And I was definitely part of that snobbery.
Yeah, I was too for a little bit. Then I changed my tune rather quickly once I really started looking at what they've actually accomplished over the years. It's pretty impressive.
Pretty bonkers.
Plus, we wouldn't have all the boutique-y stuff if it wasn't for them. All right, this is the last question, and this is the one that kind of gets people into a little bit of trouble occasionally. So we'll see how this goes. What is your favorite kind of pizza?
Oh, that's easy. Okay, well, I put this into 2 different categories because there's like boutique pizza and then there's like the pizza I eat on tour, which is
okay. So
my go-to standard tour pizza is a medium Domino's thin crust with pineapple and mushroom. And you can fight me if you don't like pineapple on your pizza. It's delicious.
That's it. We're going to be doing fisticuffs next time.
Are you not a pineapple fan?
I'm not a pineapple fan, and listeners all know this, but that's it. Like, it's not that it's on pizza or it's not on pizza. I just don't like it most of the time.
Okay, well that's a good answer because the people who like eating pineapple and then have this huge problem with putting it on their pizza is it's crazy to me because it's delicious. It's one of the best fruits that really exist.
It seems to be about 50-50.
Yeah.
The group, the Facebook group and the community around this show, it seems, maybe it's not quite, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but while pineapple lovers may feel alone at times, it's definitely not the case. Lots of people like pineapple on their pizza
because it's delicious.
It's a thing. It's definitely a thing. Okay, that's your go-to tour pizza. And before we go off that topic, Domino's used to really be awful.
It was horrible. 100%.
When they said that they changed here, what was it, 6-7 years ago maybe? When they're like, we've changed, they really did. It's substantially better than it was in like the early 2000s and the 90s. It's way better.
It's very good now. And they deliver pretty much anywhere, so it works out for me. And they're open like till 2 a.m. sometimes. Which is important when you're touring in Russia. Yeah, because eating pizza at 2 a.m. is really good for your aging body.
It's great. I hear when you get into your 30s, you should start doing as much of that as possible.
Do pizza. It's good for you.
It's good for your body. It's good for your aging touring body. Yes. All right. What's the other side of that answer?
The other side of that answer is if you're having some kind of like wood fire pizza or something like that. There's a place. I live in Kansas City. There's a place here called Il Lazzaroni, and they have a great like ricotta mushroom pizza that's drizzled with olive oil. Like that obviously is better than a Domino's pizza, but I got to go with my go-to standard, often delivery pizza.
The one that's always there for you.
The one that's always there for me when I'm starving and nothing's open around.
It's either Domino's or Taco Bell.
That's right.
Take your pick. And Domino's is going to come to you.
Exactly. I'm not trying to go anywhere after a show.
Definitely not. Right on, man. So thanks so much for coming on. This was a good chat. It was a fun time talking to you, and maybe we have to do it again sometime. This was wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, everyone. For Kyle, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones.
Do pizza. It's good for you.
All right, folks. That is it for this episode of the podcast. Make sure and go check out the band and Kyle on Instagram and all that good stuff. He's really easy to find at Kyle Sipress. So there you go. Let's see. What else we got? I think that's pretty much it. Don't forget about hashtag find Tepe's Les Paul. Still really want to try to make that happen. I know it's a long shot, but man, what an amazing thing that would be if we could help out with that. That would be crazy. Yeah, if you like more of this kind of talk and all this nonsense, there's more on Patreon. In fact, there's a little more with Kyle over there on Patreon. We've got well, gee whiz, almost 70 episodes over there, 70 extra bonus episodes on Patreon, if that's your thing. And that starts at just $5 a month. You get access to all of that stuff. And I'm constantly putting up new content over there for those people. So yes, if you could do that, that would help out the show immensely. And of course, just sharing with a friend, telling your family, telling your coworkers, anybody that you like to shred along with, or your gear buddies or online forums, wherever. If you can get the word out about this show, that helps me tremendously. So please do so. All right, I'll be back in your ears next week. Bye-bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here, I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.